Hey everybody, here. See if you can pick out a couple cool things from behind me in my office in the house. But the I did a podcast not too long ago, a week or two ago, with a friend and someone I really enjoy his company, a fellow by the name of Travis Mash, and we talked about a lot of the things that were going through social media and regarding the squat, bilateral, etc. And the reason I agreed and wanted to do the podcast rather than just jump in some of the social media threads was because I think the stuff that I would say about it seems to be different than what other people were saying. So I just thought that having dialogue instead of because I'm pretty good with people misinterpreting what I say, which is of course my own fault on those social media threads, and I just don't get involved. Especially when a topic becomes something more than just a topic. It becomes political. It becomes like arguing about religion, and it's really quite silly. So I don't think Travis has let that out yet in terms of publishing the podcast. But I hope you get a good chance to listen because I do think I have some different perspectives on that. And unlike some other people that chime in, and I think I have some credibility in terms of what I have done and how the squat as an exercise has been a big part of my life and maybe part of why some people chose to listen to me earlier in my career. I think that's a level of credibility that is not shared by a lot of other people that have talked publicly about that topic. Travis Mash, certainly somebody that I was well behind when I was coming up in powerlifting, and it was a good conversation. But there's another topic though that I'm going to talk about here, and it definitely relates to golf, of what I want to get to, because I'm seeing some interesting things as golf has now been open and running for a few weeks now up here in the Northeast. So when I wear my physical therapist hat, what are some of the things that I'm seeing? But another one of those topics that appears to, for some reason, be polarizing, not nearly as much as the squat, is this business about anti-rotation. And I mean, this is really just cut and dry. I don't really know. I think a lot of times I'd like to say I've grown up, so I'm not going to address people's names. I think if we address a concept, then we're talking about a concept. We're not talking about a person. So any suggestion that in our rotary implement sports like golf, like baseball, like lacrosse, to a degree swimming, where we have this rotary pattern that we don't decelerate, so we shouldn't be training our anti-rotation patterns. I'm not really sure that's something that's very easy to discuss because the word nonsense, the word ridiculous, the word absurd comes to mind. To suggest that we don't have decelerator muscles, man, that's tough to that's like trying to talk to somebody who says the sky is green. Now I have to guess perhaps that maybe what this person is suggesting is just using different words to explain something that probably makes a lot of sense. But to suggest that we don't have decelerator muscles, or when we're playing golf or some other rotary sport that we don't decelerate, that's a tall order to get into a discussion about, because I'm not sure where that discussion is going to go. If somebody's taking that stance, it is very unlikely in my mind that person is taking that stance with an ounce of intention to be convinced otherwise. So to suggest that we don't need anti-rotation in our programming, tall order. That's really a tall order. But where I put out a tweet today, it just like with the squat, there's a really intelligent message on both sides of the discussion. So make no mistake about it. The spine should be able to rotate, and then that digs into the just because you can doesn't mean you should. There are structures that we know can change. We know that if on an average, a lumbar spine has 5 degrees of rotation at L5S1, 2 at the 4 segments above, 2 each. So if someone had 8 and 4, 4, 4, 4, that doesn't make them a bad person. But the structure that we see in anatomy, it suggests that there's not going to be a lot of rotation. There's ligaments and direction of other types of connective tissue, both contractile and non-contractile. So you can tell me all you want that you have to be able to have, you can increase motion safely. I know you can, but it doesn't mean that you should, and it doesn't mean that it has any value. Now, if you have 0, well, we probably need a little bit. If you have 8, I don't think it's a big deal that you're off from 5. But to train with the expressed intent to increase lumbar rotation, when increasing rotation above the lumbar spine, below the lumbar spine, will get you a lot of really, really good things too, is really a strange thing. So yes, you do need to have a certain degree of rotation everywhere in the body. But that's a different concept than anti-rotation training in terms of being able to exhibit maximal force and minimal joint wear. There's a concept that comes before that where I just described the basic tenet of the joint by joint theory. The core pendulum theory would suggest that we should have mobility everywhere so that we have this sensory experience that allows for deep stabilization. So we definitely need rotation at the lumbar spine. To suggest that you should get more instead of controlling what you have, which is exactly what a lot of your heroes talk about. They talk about, very, very ideal scientific techniques to increase motion. And it can work. You can do that. I don't know why you would. Just because you want to champion this particular model, it doesn't help you do anything outside of perhaps the dance performance community where there's high value for some of those very, very gymnastic positions. So you have to be able to rotate. Doesn't mean even if you can safely increase it, that there's value to that. But in terms of training for force production, whether it's slow strength or explosive strength and power, we want to be able to have a significant amount of control at the lumbar spine. So I don't even really, aside from the fact that the amount of force that we see in rotary sports, you absolutely do have to decelerate it. So if you train with the intent to decelerate, you're probably in a solid position. And I don't get it. It's hard to comment. The squat discussion, I think there's something there. I think there's much more of a discussion than either position would lead on. And just so to give you a heads up for what we talked about with Travis Mash, the bullet points when it comes to the squat, because I'm referencing it, is when it comes to lowest system load, it's force that, in my opinion, creates the adaptations. So I don't really care what is the modality or the vehicle to create the force. If I can create the same amount of force in 2 reps versus 1 rep, and I'm using half the weight, but I then or probably more than half the weight in a single leg technique, I think that's really a very, very compelling, and that's the word that I've used in the past, compelling argument for single leg training. Not that the squat is so bad, it's that this other option is probably a lot more efficient, but then gives us more opportunities to work on other things, recovery and skill acquisition. So that'll come out soon. Similar kind of polarization with this anti-rotation, but I don't really see how there's 2 sides of this. Unless people are just using words to describe things that just mean something different than what's being discussed. So when it comes to anti-rotation, it brings me to talk about some of these golfers that I've seen recently over the last couple of weeks. And all 3, I'll talk about 3, all 3 of these individuals had the same, let's say, cause for three completely different injuries or conditions or pain patterns, and the problem was volume. So we can talk a lot about the characteristics of an inefficient golf swing, but even a very, very grand, inefficient swing that has certain characteristics that we know are detrimental to either or performance and or durability, if you play one round or not even play a round, it might just feel like whatever. And the next day, you're past it, your body was able to heal relatively quickly. But when you're playing every day, and sometimes playing 36 on a portion of those days, we want to be able to come to a statement, had a conversation with two golf pros, because you got to be talking to the golf pros when we're involved in this, because if there is a physical limitation, then we got to go to plan B in the short term from a golf swing. And what I said to them was, I said that the golf swing was the generator for this issue. And it was the golf swing, but then under context, it's the golf swing with volume. So I just said, you can have an inefficient swing from some of these factors and it not be that big a deal. But then if we do that over a 5 to 7 day period and it is extreme volume, then all of a sudden I think we're probably looking at something that's very, very meaningful. So obviously the swing characteristics can be soft or hard, where sometimes they can be coached. Other times there's a high degree of stiffness that's going to take some time, and we probably need to accommodate for that, compensate for that with a different strategy that doesn't exploit what the individual doesn't do well. And again, I'm giving you a window into the value of a keen movement evaluation. Can joints get in the right positions to absorb and adapt to stress? Yes, have at it. No, well then we probably need to make some changes to what our end game is. And the good news, there's a lot of different ways to swing the golf club. And there might be an ideal sequence. There might be an ideal list of things that all golfers do, but they look very, very different, and different individuals may be taking advantage of what they do well, but more importantly, not exploiting what they don't do well. So to continue to bridge the discussion from anti-rotation, one of these golfers had a real heavy side bend. To suggest that side bend isn't a part of golf, my understanding is that, at least a couple years ago, on tour is an average of 35 degrees of side bend. So it's not this evil thing. Now, is it happening lumbar? Is it happening thoracic? I've heard some folks suggest there should be zero side bend. I'm not sure that's consistent with the averages that we see on tour. But my client had significant pain in a simple expression of side bend. And really, when that position can happen from everything from poor setup to loss of posture to early extension, all of these inefficient swing characteristics. So we really came to the conclusion, because this individual I described as golf pro, he has all the hardware. He's very, very mobile, just needs to put it together. And I think some of that needs to happen, obviously, if he got stronger, but there would be a golf exercise, something that is now very, very appropriately golfish for him to execute. But as I explained to him, because what we're really looking for is for the glutes to drive an impact instead of side bending to create this stability in which for impact to push off against. You want it to be through the mobile, powerful glutes, not with excessive side bend and crashing upon impact. And that's just how he reproduced his pain. Now, if he did it once, maybe no big deal. In his case, it's a golf solution. That has a lot of implication to what we'll do in training with him. But I took him out into the gym, and I just took a dowel, and I put the dowel on his stomach. And I said to the client, I said, put your hands behind your back. Make believe that you had no arms and this golf club was attached to your stomach. And I put an imaginary ball at the end of the dowel. And I said, make this ball go as far as you can. And I said, take one hand and put it on your bottom and make your bottom be the driver. And he's like, I totally get it. Like he looked more athletic because this client was telling me, like, he sees still shots of impact, and great golfers that have more mobility than God, appear to have this huge side bend. You'll also see it in kettlebell sport, where it looks like they have the bell in the rack with this side bend. I'm sure a lot of them do, which is probably why a lot of them don't last. And you see the same people over and over winning world championships, even though they're in a division of one. You'll find that it's hip extension. It's active, aggressive, powerful, strong hip extension that allows that. Hey, if it's hip extension that's delivering the force through impact and it's not side bending, that tells us that anti-rotation is the answer. You can't make the ball go if you're not going to elicit impact and rotation through the hips. If you just do it through the spine, you look like a little kid with a wiffle ball bat trying to hit a ball off a tee, and they wind up rolling around in a circle. That's not anti-rotation. And they still have to decelerate, even if you're using that Bugs Bunny level of rotation where your torso gets all twisted up like a cartoon. You still got to decelerate at some point. So that the segue into rotation there with that client was really, really quite interesting, where he totally understood. Now, when I talked to the golf pro, I told him that of that illustration. Now, I said, I got to be clear. I'm not saying that's a golf drill. If it is, I don't know, because I don't get involved. I don't deal with that. Obviously, my opinion on the golf stuff is very, very strong. That most golf fitness professionals just want to be golf pros. So instead of doing what it takes to become a golf pro, they call themselves a golf fitness professional and teach a whole bunch of golf things and dare them lift up something heavy or put it down. So while a bunch of people hear this and they get all upset, it's no differently than a trainer that really wants to be a physical therapist or a physical therapist that really wants to be a trainer or something else that they're not, rather than put the time in. So I told the golf pro about what I showed the client, and I said, if that winds up being a good drill for you, but I wanted the golf pro to understand what I was seeing and how I communicated to the client to help understand that anti-rotation is the answer. Because if you don't do anti-rotation in these high velocity, high speed, high force rotational events, and you think that it's okay to put it through your spine, you're going to wind up like my guy and have to be up on the table a little bit and have to get some remedial stuff. You lose some training sessions, you lose some rounds of golf. But I think that his golf pro understood what we were looking for, and I think he knows how to help. Because luckily for this individual, this wasn't a limitation of hip rotation. I think it's an instructor and golf student environment where this client is going to not allow that back pain to continue to be a part of his golf game. The other two also volume. We have another one where there is a mobility issue, where the turn was really, really short and it turned into shoulder pain. Very classic cross arm symptoms. Secondary compressive impingement stuff, where everything cross arm, so we could implicate the AC joint if we want to hang our hat on the sensitivity of some of our traditional special tests at the shoulder. But because his turn was short, he would reach out in order to create more turn because there wasn't enough turn somewhere in the swing. And at that point in time, I did not evaluate his lower half because I knew his golf pro did. And the golf pro agreed complete with what I was seeing. And again, if my guy played one round, maybe his shoulder would be a little cranky. But instead of playing 5 rounds in 3 days, the shoulder is a little bit raging. So I don't remember if he did or didn't get a cortisone shot. We're not going to the MRI. Don't need it. He's already doing much better. But you can see how if you reach forwards and over, we'll probably get some overload of the acromioclavicular ligament. We get a little bit of fluid, you run into an impingement, and now you can't lift your arm after day 3. Again, golf volume, but now we can see where mobility issues can impact what's happening at the shoulder. And then lastly, a fellow with some real significant history of pain. Bottom line, zero degrees of hip internal rotation on that front side. And this was like news to him, going to a big-time golf club. And he said to me, you really think that the golf guys should know about this? I'm like, look, you could just Google, internal rotation for golf. That this is a hallmark of something that's required. And to be it's we're not there yet. We're not there. If front side hip internal rotation, if I'm going to be generous, I'll give him 2 degrees, and then the backside had about probably 10 to 15 degrees. If that's not something that a golf instructor is aware of, then let's just say we're not there yet. We got to get there. To not have an awareness. Now, if you had an awareness and you knew that maybe the best thing that would happen is that you might not like your recovery, hey, have a go at it. It's no one's job, no one's role to say, to measure someone else's risk for them. But, so we got 3 different individuals that are going to create solutions 3 different ways. One was through golf. One was through some fundamental changes in their motor strategies. And then one, which is probably going to be the most long-term fix, getting into that front side hip to improve internal rotation. And they all came in, with huge volume. And so I think a lot of folks that are working with golfers will probably see that. And every time we're going to find that anti-rotation is a significant concept that'll help us understand, in this case, as a physical therapist, how to help these folks, but also how to have maximal force production and minimal joint wear. Anti-rotation is really not something that I think is really up for discussion. So that's what I got here. We got take a look at the website. We've got an online consultation, and really excited of where that can go in terms of getting people into the city. Where if the consultation isn't the answer, what we're doing is just taking that contribution and applying it to what we would do in the city, because you can't be a physical therapist on the internet. It doesn't work. But what we can do is start to generate some ideas, and maybe if somebody's on the fence about committing to coming into the city or some of these other places where me, Kyle O, Kyle B, and Matt Tolstoy are at, I think there's we can use that. We can use that money and contribute it if the hour is of no value. And we're still in the process of putting together the shoot, but some online training stuff will be coming out in a little bit. So keep checking out the website, and I'll keep trying to do what I can here if something moves me to be on here and put some of these little one-way conversations out on the internet.